How are you? The appropriate thing would have been, he's Lindsay's dad, my father-in-law. He left that part out. But he probably only leaves it out because occasionally I do. I'm going to try to be very aware of time, because I realize that you're trying to get somewhere to get something to eat, right? Isn't that your plan? A few thoughts on parenting, and as I say that word, I realize that it's sort of set up for failure, because every one of us believes that we know how to parent and everybody else does not. And so you look at a guy, and number one, you look at a guy like me and you say, well, he's forgotten. Maybe so. I was just telling Matt and Caitlin that there was a time at which our three girls, at one moment in time, were 13, 16, and 18. Yeah. My hair started to turn white at that point. In a broad sense, I say my hair is white because of daughters and deacons. More in the beginning because of daughters, more in the last few years because of deacons. I'm losing it because of elders. So I mean, that's just the way it is. You're quotable for what I've got to say to you is this, and remember this well. If you raise your children, you can spoil your grandchildren, which my wife is totally dedicated to doing. We're at the house a minute ago. Luke, the little one, was still going to be there for a while, and Jude wanted to go with us. She says, okay, Luke and I will have ice cream. And they did, of course. If you raise your kids, you can spoil your grandkids. You know what the other side of that is? If you spoil your kids, you get to raise your grandkids. So just keep that in mind, right? Now that's a cold, hard truth right there. Cold, hard truth. Parenting, certainly one of those things where experience and expectation is a little bit different. Did anybody expect it to be what it actually was? I mean, I think no one really expects it to be what it actually is. Babies are so stinking cute, right? I mean, they are, even the ugly ones. They're still cute. And you take this cute little baby. I remember one of the moment at which it set in on me. Now, we had kids, at the time, ours were bottle fed during those years. There was, a lot of advice going on. And microwave, right? Which is totally wrong, right? There was one night that I put a bottle in water on the stove, and Lindsay fell asleep on my shoulder, woke up about 5 hours later, and the water was going out of the pan, the milk was going out of the bottle, and the nipple had caved in. I mean, it was about to burn the house down, right? But they're just cute. And there was that moment at which I'm rocking in the chair, and I realized that Lindsay's just sitting on my shoulder. I'd let go of her, and she's just sitting on my shoulder, and I look down, and I'm like, oh no, we've got to raise this kid. And it scared me to death. You think every day's going to be bliss, every day's going to be wonderful, and then reality sets in. Especially if the first word that your child introduces you to is spelled C-O-L-I-C. Anybody on that train? Yeah. Okay. Colicky baby at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's tough. I mean, it doesn't challenge my ability to be civil and to be kind and to be nice, but it's like, what can I do next? What can I try next, right? Or it may be that you had the most compliant, easy child, and you thought, what's the big deal everybody talks about? And then you had another child. Or you may be one of those parents that for a while thought that being a parent is a lot more about the experience than it actually being a task. And so you coasted along for 3 years until it dawns on you one day that this child is not becoming that nice little compliant, kind child that's not embarrassing me everywhere I go. And you're like, we got to do something just a little bit different. Parenting is hard work, so says Jessica, age 27. I love that. I sent that to, I don't know where I got that, but anyway, Lindsay and I share it around a lot. I love it. It's not stressful at all. 27 years old. Ephesians chapter 6. We know the passage well. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. And, you know, you can debate all day long what that means. It means exactly what it says. It's the first commandment that had a promise to go along with it, about how good it would be if you did it well, how not so good it would be if you didn't do it very well. Verse 3, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Now, of course, that was first given promised land type thing. You know, and probably today we should translate that you may live long in your present neighborhood. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and the instruction of the Lord, right? Now, you can expound on that for a long time. We'll expound on it a little bit. Question, what is the first way a child, a newborn baby, what is the first way that a child learns? It can be said in a word.
Imitation.
What?
Imitation.
The psychologists call it mirroring. It's imitation. They do what you do. You smile, they smile. I love little kids, and I still like, and I like little kids that like me, right? But I'm smart. I mean, I am smart. I may not look it, but I am smart. What I'm smart about is you don't impress little kids by being all up in their face and getting all up in the business, and the kids are like, back it off. So I'm really nice and gentle and slow and keep my distance. So little kids, I can make the little kids love me. Brand new one the other day, pretty young, waves at me as I go by, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready. And I'm finding myself walking up to kids and say, oh, how are you today? How are you today? And I realize I got a mask on. They can't see anything because they're just looking at me like, you're doing nothing. You're doing nothing. You know, that's okay though. That's okay. They mirror. In reality, parenting is about modeling. It's about modeling what we do. It's about modeling how we react. What we say, how we react. We get kind of caught up in, we want a child to obey my commands. We want a child to listen to what I say. And yes, there's some truth to that. We want that. But it's not the thing we want the most, because what we want the most is our kids to model the behavior, model the lifestyle we're living in front of them. And we want them to model how we react to things. And so we've got to react to things the way that we want them to react to things. A couple of things that to me are just anchored down there, deep, important stuff. One of them for me in parenting is it's never too early or it's never too late for consistency. If you ask me, and I don't claim to be an expert, all right? I claim to be somebody who is pretty well studied on this topic, and someone who has some experience and enough gray hair to be credible. So, but consistency is the key in my impression. Just the way I see it. Consistency is the key. We want people to be consistent, don't we? What do you look for in the people you work with? Whether they are over you in some kind of role, or whether they work under you, or whether they are just equal with you. And we want consistency out of people. We want people to be dependable. We want them to be the same. We don't like to be frustrated. The word used in Ephesians chapter 4, in both ESV, I read ESV, and King James was the same word actually. Not the best word. Provoke. Don't provoke your children to anger. Well, I hope not, right? But that's not the best word probably. One of the versions uses the word exasperate. Now that's a little bit more true to what the word means. Exasperate, which is a little bit of irritation, confusing. You know, they don't know how to take you because you're not consistent. And some will even use the word exacerbate. Now, you know, I don't know if you want to know the difference between the two, and there's not really a difference between the two. Exacerbate is exasperate with a twist of bitterness. It's about all that it really amounts to. But we're supposedly, or we ought to be, modeling behavior. How many of you would admit, and I'll raise my hand first because I will admit, in my house, my father was not a disciplinarian, but my father was also a drunk, so, okay, he was kind of absent in that sense. My mother was the disciplinarian in the family. How many of you remember having that feeling, I just wish you'd be absolutely consistent? When you say don't, just mean don't. When you say I'm not going to tell you again, mean I'm not going to tell you again. I had a snooze button before I even had an alarm clock. My mother would walk into the room and she'd say, Steve, it's time to get up. 9 minutes later, she'd come back in the room. Steve, it's time to get up. 9 minutes later, she comes back in the room. This is the last time I'm coming in here. I got up. I had 2 snooze buttons. Because the last time she was coming in here was her announcement that I'm not coming again. I thought, thanks for the 2 snoozes. And so that was life. And my mother was a great lady and not inconsistent in hardly any ways at all. But I can even remember, though, I do remember having times at which I thought, do what you say you're going to do. Mean what you say. I think our children tend to do that. I do pay a little attention to notes these days because I realize that if I realized back several years ago, if I don't, I spend a lot more time than I intended to. Book I'd recommend to you, Dr. Robert Shaw. Dr. Shaw, the book is called The Epidemic, and he's really talking about the epidemic that he describes is basically out of control children. And you don't say, well, I don't need to read that book because my children aren't out of control. But he talks about how we get there and the consistency of not being there. And so it's a great book, small book, not hard. You can, I think, well, it's a good enough book. I've got an iBook version and a print copy. When books are really good, I have both copies. It makes no sense, but I do. I like a book in my hand. He made the statement. He says, it's possible for a parent to make it really clear that he or she will not bargain under duress. Children are very bright, learn rules very rapidly. The problem is that we're teaching them the wrong rules. What he's talking about, the context of that is that consistency is, when I say no, I mean no. When I say we're not doing something, then no, we're not doing it. Our youngest grandson is Luke, and he's 4, and he's a manipulator. But he learned because his mother has done a good job of, I don't bargain under duress. I've always said that those kids were raised in a laboratory. I mean, their dad is a therapist, and their mom has an Ed.D. in child development. They're raised in a laboratory. They're like test tube kids. But Luke has learned whining gets you nowhere. So a couple of weeks ago, Leah texted and she's laughing, of course, behind, not laughing in front of Luke, probably. But she says, I just told Luke, no. 2 seconds later, he said, Mommy, you're so pretty. I mean, it's like, Keith knows him well enough to know he can work a room. I'm telling you, the boy can work a room. Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil, before he was Dr. Phil, was actually a doctor, not just a TV host. And he actually wrote a book that was a very good book. He says something in that book that's important. And it really is important. He says, no one does anything that doesn't work for them. It's made a difference in the way I do a lot of things. I read that many years ago. Great book. Can't think of the name of the book. But it's been around a while. But he says, we don't do things that don't work for us. Again, a Luke story. Luke broke his collarbone the other day. He and his brother were kind of wrestling a little too much, and brother let go, and he went flying across the room. Well, he breaks his collarbone. They're over there, and he's got his thing in a bandage, and it's just not much of a sling, right? And well, what do we need to do? And the doctor says, oh, you don't have to do much. Said, give him a day. He won't move it. She said, oh, really? She said, oh, yeah. She said, kids are smart. They don't do things that hurt. And, for 2 or 3 days, in a couple of days, he was like, oh, or he'd go to move it out, And then About a week later, he's feeling great, and he's playing all over the place, but that arm is like stealth. I mean, that arm is moving nowhere because he's inflicting no pain because that don't work. Kids only do what works. And I know your child is not exactly like your other child, or your third child, or fourth child, or fifth child. And I know they're not like other kids, but every kid, almost every kid, they only do what works for them. If they're doing something that frustrates you, you got to look for, where is it working? Because it is working. I've seen people, little bitty babies, they throw something on the ground. No. They throw it on the ground. No. No. I said no. We're like, it's a cool game. I keep throwing it down, she keeps running it back up. The best I've ever seen done there is a parent who very consistently, from day one, when they threw it away, it was gone. No, I'm sorry. When they threw it away, it came back up. Don't throw it away. If they threw it away a second time, it's literally gone. All toys, they're gone. You quit throwing stuff away if you lose it. Doesn't work so good on green beans. but it does work on most things. Kids are malleable. It's interesting. I had the best fun of anything I've ever done. Well, probably close. With Cade when he was little. When Cade was born, the day he came home from the hospital, very quietly, because I know my family, I especially know my wife, I whispered in his ear. I said, Cade, Pop's buddy. Your Pop's buddy. Every time I saw that kid, I said, come on, I'd get in his ear. I said, Pop's buddy, Pop's buddy. All the way, every time I saw him, totally consistent. Guess what was the first phrase the boy put together? Good friend of mine, Tom Tackett. Tom was one of our deacons, one of our elders. Cade comes down, a little bitty Cade, and he wasn't very tall when he was a kid. He was pretty low to the ground. And he'd come up the hallway, and Tom would look down, and he was saying, Bible, Mama, Daddy, Pop's buddy. He'd come down, Tom would hit him up, and he'd say, you know Tom. Tom hit him up and said, hey Cade, whose buddy are you? He said, Pop's buddy. It was wonderful. I tried it with Zoe. Sandy sabotaged me, messed the whole thing up. I knew I couldn't tell, and so I didn't tell with Cade. Last thing here. Goal number one has to be job number one. My two things about parenting. It's never too early, never too late to be consistent. Number two, goal number one has to be job number one. Now the question is, what is goal number one? What is job number one? Well, you can say it the way you want, but job number one has got to be raising kids who will have a life like yours when they get to be adults. You can say raising kids to be model citizens. Well, hopefully you're a model citizen. Raising a child to be spiritually mature. Well, hopefully that describes you as well, right? That is job number one. I remember a parent one time of teenagers, their kids were the same age as ours. And this lady said in Bible class, she said, I don't want my kids to know anything about this world. I want to keep them protected from this world as long as possible. And I don't want any understanding of this world at all. In other words, I don't want them out in the world. Those kids, when they went to college, were blown totally away. Now, I would argue that yes, you can expose your child to too much world. I understand that. Yes, you gradually, let them know what the world is like. But what I'm saying by that is, and goal number one, job number one, is that we've got to raise our children in a way that reflects reality and truth. Okay? Raise your children in a way that reflects reality and truth. We all tell our kids, one thing you better not do is lie. Do not lie to me. Truth is important to us. So raise your kids where that truth is important, and raise your kids where there's just a sense of reality to your home. How do you do that? How do you do that in daily living? Well, there's a couple of things. But we don't want a child who, gets out in the world and realizes that I wasn't prepared for this. I wasn't prepared for this at all. I'll never forget the story of a lady who told the story, actually saw it happen. It was at Harding, it was about 10 years ago. Freshmen come in, dorm orientation night, first night there, they're giving them the basic rules. And at the end, one of the girls raises her hand and she says, so where do we drop off our laundry? She said, you do your laundry. She said, oh yeah, but where do I leave it? Do I just put it outside the door in a bag? And I'm like, yeah, you weren't ready for the real world at all, were you? How do you do that? I think you teach kids to be accountable for their actions, and you hold them accountable for their actions. Now, not accountable in the sense that they might be, when they're 15, but yet you hold them accountable for their actions. You help them to learn that actions have consequences. Yeah. Not too long ago, Sunday afternoon, we're all at the house and the dining room was pretty full. I sat down in the chair over in the corner. And when I sat down in this chair over in the corner, somebody looks at Luke. We have a lot of fun at Luke's expense, don't we, Keith? Somebody looks at Luke and they said, ooh, Luke pops in the no-no chair. And he looks over him. He was. Nobody sits in that chair. Luke walks over to me and he leans down, because that's what happens to Luke when he's in the no-no chair. Somebody leans down, gets right in his face. He said, Bob, what did you do? And I didn't get anything out of my mouth until somebody over in the peanut gallery, or the rest of the family, says, I guess Pop didn't eat his lunch, didn't finish his food or whatever. He looks back at me and he says, Pop, you've got a choice. He said, finish your dinner, take a nap. He even knew how to wait a second. And he knows how to do it. Because Luke says, I don't want to eat. Well, you don't have to eat. He's got a choice. You're not getting any dessert. Or if he's really cranky, well, you don't have to eat. We can take a nap if you want to. So he gets a choice. Life is about choices. Now, I'll leave you on that with on a very serious note. We all like the idea. We do. We like the idea of our children being obedient to us. It feels very nice when you're in a crowd, and you look down and you don't have to raise your voice. You just say, son, let's stop that. Son stops it. It's embarrassing when you say that and they're looking at you like, we love that and we appreciate, we like that and we want a little bit of that, but it scares me. It scares me when I hear a father look at his son and say, son, and the son literally jumps, scared to death. And the other side of that is, you don't want children who simply blindly do everything that a person in authority tells them to do. Now, I'm going on a downer here for just a second. Those kind of kids get abused. Those kind of kids can't make decisions. We raise kids in reality and in truth when they're expected to be honest, they're expected to be kind, but they can express anything they want to express, and they know that they've got a choice. Now, they may not like the alternative, but they've got a choice. As adults, we have choices. People are ready for the world when they're raised in that sense. other grandchild. I'm intentionally not using Kate and Zoe because y'all know them. I've got a PowerPoint on a lesson series that I did years ago, and I told Zoe, I said, Zoe, you got to be my person here. I said, I want you to just bend down and just scream at your loudest like that. And she did, and I took a picture, and it was my picture there. Most people didn't know who it was, but a few people caught on, like, wow, Zoe did that for you, didn't you? But Jude's now 8. He was always taught that you got choices. You can express yourself every moment of the day. But you got to be kind. You got to be nice. What's the rules of Christianity? Express yourself. You don't have to agree with everybody, but you've got to be kind, and you've got to be truthful, and you've got to be nice. That's raising children for the real world. Well, Jude went to his mom and asked something. No. Went to his dad. No. Went to Sandy. Can't believe she said no. went to me. I said no. And just kind of worked in the room, you know. In his frustration, he gets in the middle, back in the middle of the room because he didn't know where to go for it at this point. And he says, I just don't like anything any adult is saying right now. And I don't know who it was, but we look at it and we said, welcome to the real world. Because that's the real world. But he was okay with it. He didn't like the way it was going, but he realized that, well, it's just the way it is at the moment. And the truth is, and the reality was, he was kind about it, he was nice about it, so it worked. It worked. Your children may want to live with you forever. You may even be foolish enough to want them to live with you forever. Whitney used to say, and Whitney's our one who would not live with us right now more than any of the other 3 would never live with us right now. But she always said, Dad, I want you to build me a house in the backyard so I can live right with you. And then she grew up, right? Yeah. Well, the truth is, they are going to grow up, and the truth is you want them to grow up, and they are going to leave home, and you want them to leave home. And you want them to be ready. And in the process, you want them to be nice and kind to kids. And we frustrate them when we don't give them reasonable choices. We frustrate them when we won't let them express themselves. We frustrate them in so many ways. There's more to that idea of do not exacerbate your children. And there's such easy ways, I think, to do that well. To do it well. It's enjoyable to be here with you for a few minutes this evening. I may go get me something to eat on my way home too. Y'all enjoy yourself. Pray with me if you will. Our gracious Father, we love you and we thank you and we praise you. We thank you for the opportunity to gather here as Christian people where we can leave our children in a nice and a kind environment and go spend some time together. And I thank you for Keith and Lindsay for making it possible for everyone here to do just that. We thank you for that opportunity. Help us, Father, to be very intentional with our children, with our grandchildren. Help us to model before them mature adult behavior so that we can turn them into mature spiritual adults. Thank you for this brief time together. We're so thankful for Jesus. It's in his wonderful name we pray. Amen. It's good to be with you guys.